Hi, I'm the OBG, and tonight I'm going to be talking with Hannah Nemos from Aloe Nottingham. He's my guest tonight. We've met recently, and we're going to see how that goes. But first of all, how are you? You've been in your lockdowns now for, well, a long time, just like us over here in Spain. But on Monday, apparently, we've got some freedoms. On Monday, we can go further afield, much further afield. We can do what we like, but we can't go swimming or playing on the beach. And we have to keep this social distancing up. But in the main, it's looking good. I'm going to keep that little slideshow there. And I just hope you've all had a good week and that you're bearing up. Tomorrow I've got a big show. I should have anyway. I think I took a week off. I took 5 days off. And I mean, that was 5 days off. So I haven't actually planned anything. So let's see how tonight goes, and if I'm in the mood for tomorrow, we'll do the Sunday show. I have been doing stuff, actually. When I say I haven't been doing anything, I always say that. It feels like I'm not working when I'm working myself to the bone. But yeah, I've been preparing stuff. I've been doing some pre-recorded shows and some housekeeping, which I'm still way behind on. But that's what you get when you set out on such an adventurous project as a single person. So I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to call up Mr. Nemos right now. Okay, hi, Hannah, you're on at the moment. The viewers can't see you right yet. Just give me 1 second. I've just got to set up a few things and you'll be live for everyone to see. Let's have a look. Live window capture. Boom, and there you are. Right, so my guest tonight, everybody, is from Aloe Nottingham. Can I ask you to introduce yourself, your name, and say a little about what you're about?
Absolutely. Hi, Cedric. My name's Hannah Nemos. I run a company called Aloe Nottingham. We supply aloe vera plant leaves to the public. We supply them to other businesses and so forth. I'm basically trying to raise awareness about aloe vera.
Superb. Okay, now, aloe vera is one of those plants that everyone's kind of heard about. They've seen it in products and so on. And that, amongst other plants known to be miracle cures or, serve for other purposes. Now, let me just explain a little bit to some of the viewers about aloe vera, and obviously you can add to that, it's your profession. But just to say that aloe vera is a short shrub, but it's got a long history of being used for medicinal purposes, and it's been dated as far back as ancient Egypt. And once again, African history starts and stops at Egypt. Such a travesty, but I digress. It's also native to southern Europe and the Canary Islands, and it's also grown in tropical climates worldwide. And it's said to have properties that allow it to do many things, from relieving heartburn to potentially slowing the spread of breast cancer. And researchers are just beginning to unlock the benefits of this universal plant and its many byproducts. But that's enough from me. I'm going to move on to Hannah now, and let's hear what he has to say. So before I do go on, am I pronouncing your name right? Is that Hannah Nemos or Nemos?
Nemos, yeah, Hannah Nemos.
Thank you. Okay, can you tell us a little more about aloe vera?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the introduction you just gave was fabulous. I've got to say it was more extensive than I usually do.
Oh, thank you.
My whole effort is to try and break down the mystique and hype that has been created around aloe vera. As you said, it's one of those plants, one of those products that everyone seems to have heard of. We've seen it in toothpaste, shampoo, shower gel, you name it, toilet paper now. And, its name seems to be used to promote and market other things. So the whole effort of mine from the very beginning has been to try and bring it back to source, to show people that it's actually a plant. There's a leaf, you cut it open as you would any other fruit or vegetable, you peel it, and you have the gel. I try and show people what the gel is, what to do with it, how to take it. Now, as you said, aloe vera, I understand it originates in South Africa, I believe. A lot of succulents seem to come from that part of the world. Now, you mentioned something about it being a miracle cure. Now, the thing is, everything's being touted as a sort of a quick fix, or, whereas it's more about a lifestyle change with everything, because whatever we've we've got at the moment, we've accumulated it slowly through our lifestyles, through what we eat, what we drink, what we think, what we read, what we watch. And so when people ask me what's aloe vera good for, I want to say everything. But then I have to qualify that statement that if you understand how the gut works, the immune system works, things like this, and the effects that aloe vera has on those, then it starts to make sense, and it doesn't seem like such a grandiose claim, or it can help with anything, it can cure anything. Another thing is, I need to mention at the very beginning, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. This is my little disclaimer. I don't give advice. What I do is I share stories, anecdotal evidence, testimonies, my own experience, and I share it with people. This is how you would do it if you want to do it. And obviously after that, it's up to them whether they choose to or not.
Fantastic. That's one of the best things I've heard in a long time with regards to someone taking on something which people are holding on to and relaying exactly what your role is, because that's very important. And I did use the term the wonder drug because some people adopt something, and when aloe vera, this to me in my lifetime, this is the second coming of aloe vera. It was massive in the late 70s and so on. And people, kind of make those claims and they start using it for everything, but without consultation. And the role that you're playing seems very, very important in that sense, in that you're doing it by testimony, by experience, and also letting people know what it's capable of, and then they can make their own choices. So is there anything in particular that you would say, because like everything, obviously it's not really a wonder drug, but is there a specific area that aloe vera is good for?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the number one thing to mention is 75% of your immune system is in your digestive tract. Now, aloe vera is one of the most potent digestive tract healers available. Now, when I said a moment ago, it can help with so many things, or it can help with everything, as people are becoming more and more aware recently, the gut is the commander, the control center. As I just said, 75% of our immune system is there. And so it's very important to understand where dis-ease comes from, why it's occurring. Again, I mentioned the lifestyle thing because it's happening slowly. It's not like we suddenly eat a chocolate bar or do, lots of, jars of chocolate, but it's over time that gradually, we're burning our membranes, we're completely wrecking our microbiome. There's so many ways that we're doing that, and we just need to return to a more, what I would call normal, which to me is a more natural way of living, way of eating. So to answer your question, it has to be the gut, number one, because whether we're talking about psoriasis, eczema, which are skin conditions, rashes, or whether we're talking about fibromyalgia and cancer and things at the extreme other end, they all start with in your digestive system. They all start with the membranes burning down. They all start with inflammation, and then we can get into scientific terms and details how they progress. I always say to people when they come to see me, it's health, good health, bad health. It's all on one continuum. So we've got these labels for cancer, the fibromyalgia, and all MS and ME and all these things. But most of them, obviously, I won't say all of them, but they're on a continuum. So what I'm saying is, you start off at good health, presumably when you're born. Obviously, some people are born with health issues. Again, the exception proves the rule. And over time, whether it be through diet, through medication, through lifestyle, whatever it may be, you're going to harm yourself. And so I'm losing myself because I've got so much I want.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine. I understand. Let me interject if I can. You're talking about the source as an answer to my question, and it's in the gut, where the majority of the benefits can be seen. And the gut's very, very important and it's often overlooked. And I think you was alluding to the idea that it's a continuum. A lot of these maladies, illnesses, are all connected really, and there's a single source, and that can be greatly benefited by aloe vera, for instance, or any other kind of medicinal or herb that works on the gut.
Yeah, I mean, the skin conditions, for example, they're a warning sign. They're our body telling us that something is wrong, and that's like a low-level manifestation showing us, you've got an issue and you need to do something. Now, different people will get them in their nails, it might be hair loss, it might be in their phone, it can manifest in different ways in different people. But as you say, it's often overlooked, and now it's coming in more, whether it be through diet, through, like you say, herbs, aloe vera, intermittent fasting, uh, vegetable juicing, which I hope we'll touch on in a moment. All these different things, people are helping themselves now. They're changing their bodies, they're changing their energy levels. It ultimately changes your mind, because I believe your thoughts are all, your mind is affected by your gut. You know, in the West, we've been led to believe that the brain is in charge of everything, and the brain and the mind is the controller. It processes everything, but is it the originator of everything? I don't really know. And so,
Well, there's a whole school of scientists at the moment who are saying that the gut is a second brain. I don't know if you heard.
I was just about to say, there are different cultures around the world where they call the gut the second brain, the big brain, the little brain, you know, depending where it is. And of course, that's the point. I mean, I don't know if I saw on your show a couple of weeks ago, and I've heard it elsewhere. Doctors are given like a week's training, 8 hours. You know, it's a module. That's not enough for what's going on. And now I believe there's a guy called Dr. Chatterjee. He's even been on the BBC, which is very significant. Even though I might not be a supporter, but that's not the point if more people see it. And he's taken a very interesting angle as far as I'm concerned. He's taking the route of finances, and he's taking on diabetes, for example, type 2 diabetes. Excuse me. And what he's saying is, the diabetes type 2 is costing the NHS X amount of money. It's something crazy, millions of pounds a year. And he's saying, surely, if we could get people to help themselves change their diets and their lifestyles to the point that they're not going to have type 2 diabetes anymore, then that's going to help them, and it's going to save the NHS millions of pounds. So, like I say, now they're petitioning, him and another doctor are petitioning the medical association in this country that there should be more training on nutrition. It shouldn't just be a week, it shouldn't just be 8 hours, you know, whatever it is.
Understood, just to increase their learning time. Now, I don't want to go down a conspiracy theory route. I am the OBG. So it's obvious that medicines, plant extracts work, and always have done. And let me just say this before I go on, because healing with medicinal plants is as old as mankind itself, and the connection between man and his search for drugs in nature dates from as far from the past. And there's ample evidence from various sources and written documents, preserved monuments, and even original plant medicines. And awareness of medicinal plant usage is a result of many years of struggle against illnesses to which man learned to pursue drugs in the barks of trees, seeds, fruit bodies, and other parts of plants. But contemporary science, which acknowledged their active action, started to synthesize them. And they're doing this semi-synthesis or full synthesis of plants, and they're extracting the active agents, very rarely taking a balancing agents, and this is a problem within itself. So to go back onto what I started off there, I'm saying there seems to be some kind of conspiracy, in a sense, to me at least, that there's more money to be made by Big Pharma selling drugs to people rather than going down the natural route. Is that something that you can talk about?
I mean, absolutely. One thing I'll say is, anything I'm going to say now, I'm expressing my personal opinions as Hannah Nemos, not necessarily Alonoti.
Understood.
Touched on it beautifully. You said they synthesize it. What they do is they extract the bitter part of the plant. I'll repeat that, the bitter part of the plant. They synthesize it, they patent it, and then they sell it back to us. And usually they'll tell us the plant itself is dangerous. So be careful, it needs processing. You don't know how to do that, we do, and then it will be in the medicine. Now, another interesting point is, in our taste spectrum, salt, sweet, savory, bitter, all of this, the bitter has basically been removed. Now, there are a few sayings, the bitter the better, or what's bitter to the tongue is sweet to the body. Now, the only thing we have now that tastes bitter is medicine. And the reason it tastes bitter is because it's been synthesized on the basis of a plant. So, when you talk about a conspiracy, you can grow aloe vera in your own house. In England, which the reason I stress in England, it's a terrible climate. It's an awful, weather-wise, most of the year, it's bad. You can still grow aloe vera in your own house. Now, you can buy a leaf, which again has been grown by somebody. Now, the point is, you can't make your own medicine, quote unquote, like drugs, pharmaceuticals, what have you. but you can go this. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be such a deep-seated conspiracy to see that if there is a profit motive, then somebody is going to be benefiting from that, and they're going to be pushing that and marketing that.
Yes, understood.
Now, it gets a bit dicey when you look at things like the Cancer Act 1939. Now, I would urge everybody to Google that for themselves, not to take my word for it, to check out what it is, to read it carefully, because they use language very carefully, and they're very slick with their language. I think you've touched on this before. The etymology and the phrases they use, the way they juxtapose it, everything. So read it and look at it and see if it makes sense to you, because it doesn't make sense to me. There are people who have helped other people back to good health who are either dead or they've been locked up because they've helped other people.
Understood. That's an ongoing process. That's what a system always does, to be honest. And once again, this is why I started on the conspiracy idea. And it's not a term I like to use, really, but it's a term that people are familiar with. And it's to say where there is big money and the money's being pursued and the patents can be held onto and so on, and then people will neglect the medicines, but not through any fault of their own. That's through misinformation. We're very trusting as human beings, and we kind of tend to want to hold on to what's in the mainstream. So what do you think is keeping people away from natural medicines, if at all? Why are people not using as much as they could be?
Very, very good question. Number one has to be exposure. From day dot, we are told if you're ill, you ring the doctor, you make an appointment, and you go to the doctor.
True.
Now, an interesting phenomenon is, let's say if you have something like a basic cough of some kind, the amount of times you'll go to the doctors, and when you're in the waiting room, you suddenly don't have much of a cough. And you sat there almost feeling like a fraud, like, what am I going to do in front of the doctor? I've been coughing and spluttering at home, and now I'm not going to do that. As I understand it, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, the programming is, when you're ill, you go to the doctor and you get better. So, your mind and your subconscious, when you go to the doctor, you get better.
Understood. Yep.
So number one has to be exposure. The automatic default position is go to the doctor, go to the pharmacy, take what they tell you. 3 times a day, 2 tablets every week for 3 weeks. And we don't bat an eyelid. But I tell someone, try aloe vera 5 days in a row, and they're looking at me like I'm wielding a machete at them. Again, it's all the training. Now, if I had a white coat and a stethoscope and a badge, or I was in the right location, they're more likely to take on what I'm saying. So number 2 has to be, and it ties in with number 1, it has to be the conditioning. We've been taught the only way you can get help is this way. Well, that's not true. Number 3, I think you've touched on a nice point. People are trusting, people are also suspicious. So you suggested them lavender oil, and they want to know everything about lavender oil. But if you ask them to pick up their tablets and ask them what they know about those tablets, they know nothing.
Well, that's a trust issue, and totally. And we've handed over so much because I'm very vocal and about science, scientists, medicine, doctors, and people sometimes just, that they want to fight you for it because it goes against their belief totally. Now, if you said, well, doctors don't, especially general practitioner, they don't know that much really, and people are flabbergasted. Like, well, but he's a doctor. He's almost got a godlike status, and his word is, is gospel. So that's one of the challenges we're going to have to come over. And it is, as you said, a question of exposure, but it's how to do that. Because I've seen a concerted effort over many years by the bigger companies and their cohorts in the media who keep pushing that herbal medicines or alternative therapies are bad. And this is a challenge that we're going to have to overcome.
Absolutely. I mean, and anyone who knows me will be surprised at this, but I'm being slightly hesitant with the whole conspiracy side of things, mainly to protect myself and my business. And that in itself proves the situation We've seen very recently freedom of speech, videos being taken down, channels being censored, and it's a crazy time because 5, 10 years ago, if we were to talk about this, we would have been laughed at by most people and we would have been conspiracy theorists. It's literally happening right now.
Let me just stop you there a moment, Hannah. Excuse me. This is something I want to talk about for sure later on. Before we do that, let's close up because I don't want to associate this with your business as such. So let's just kind of try and close what we're talking about, your business and so on, and then we can get onto a new topic. So can you let us know where you're actually based?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm based in Nottingham. At the moment, I have a workshop in the Old Nose factory. It's probably about 5 minutes from the city centre. It's a very humble workshop. There's a load of plants there. There's a load of leaves there. And yeah, I'm online, www.allonottingham.com, Facebook, Instagram. If you Google Allo Nottingham, anything to do with it is me, basically. And yeah, all the contact details are on there. The main things I would say is we sell plants and we sell leaves. Leaves is the main thing that I push, and if I had my way, I would only deal with the leaves. They're massive. They're like 1.3 kilograms at the moment. So on the posters it says just over a kilogram. They're about 80 centimeters in length at the moment. 5 to 7 years old. They come from Spain. I'm not plugging it for sales. I'm plugging it because if people were to actually try this stuff for themselves in the morning, in a fresh drink, for a couple of days, they're going to feel benefits. And this kind of ties in with, I suppose, the second part of what we're going to get to. One of the things that I've heard objections, not so much recently, but in the past that I've heard with aloe vera is that people will Google it and some sources will say it's toxic because it makes you run to the bathroom. Now, the second train of thought, and I'm in the second camp, is if that happens, it's because it needs to, and that's the cathartic process, that's the clearing out process, and that's actually the benefit of the aloe vera. But on some sources, it will say that's the negative, that's why you shouldn't take it. So do your own research. Again, I'm not a medical professional. Check it out. As I say, if I could afford to send everybody a leaf for free for them to try it, I would do, because the benefits. So you can. When I walk into an event or a place that I've done events at, and people are saying thank you, when they've already thanked me 5-6 times before, because they've lost their diabetes medication, or because they've suffered from duodenal ulcers and gastric problems for 20 years, and literally they took a leaf off a plant and they don't suffer anymore. There's nothing better.
This is prevalent all over the world.
We can't touch that. No, like what is a card or a watch going to do for that feeling? I had a dog owner contact me because his dog had epilepsy, and he'd nearly put the dog down 4 times, and then he found an online forum, and some lady was giving her dog aloe vera, and this was probably 4 years ago. I'd say the dog passed away about 1.5 years ago. The guy had another 2.5 years. He said the dog was convulsing multiple times a day. Instead, now it was convulsing once every 8 weeks, roughly. Now,
understood.
Now that is what this is about. So yeah, to get back to the point, forgive me. You can find us on social media, Google us. We've got the website. It's all rudimentary. I'm working on it myself.
Hey, less of the excuses about rudimentary and so on. The basics are the best in my view as well. And also, you mentioned that you've got a workshop. Do you mean an actual workshop where people come to work with you, or business?
I call it a workshop is because I get a lot of messages. Have you got a shop? It's not actually a shop, so it's not got set opening times or like a shop front. It's essentially it's a big building where you can hire out a room for whatever purpose you want, and I've got mine filled with racks of plants. So,
well, there's an idea there. A little workshop, aloe vera workshops. People come in, spend some time with you, they learn about the plant, they get hands-on and so on. That would be a great idea. Now, you mentioned also about rudimentary, and you use a couple of terms which I think sometimes a little self-deprecating, although that wasn't your intention. And that's to say, there's nothing wrong with the basics. When you think of medicines from way back in time, not even way back, a couple of 100 years ago, when I think there were definitely more women involved, and before licenses and people wanted to earn money from it externally, we knew about plants. And that was just common knowledge within a village, within a community, and so on. And we've just lost that completely. That's the sort of education that's being slowly or very quickly eroded, in fact. I've got a quick story here. My mother, she had a swollen ankle when she was in her early 70s. And she was a little concerned about it because she's a very active woman, and she thought maybe she wouldn't be able to garden and so on no more. She did go to the hospital. They couldn't find nothing. They x-rayed her, couldn't find nothing. Sent her to the doctor, couldn't find nothing. Gave her some tablets. It didn't go down. A friend of hers happened to be going to Grenada in the West Indies for a holiday. She mentioned they should bring back, and I forget the name of the leaf, but she came back and she brought a leaf, quite a lot of it actually. And my mother wrapped it round her foot for 2 days, and that was it. And she was right as rain. She could walk and she could carry on just as normal. So I'm a firm believer, not just because I want to go against the mad scientists, but because I've seen it firsthand. Ever since a child, I was fascinated, and especially someone who lived in the countryside, because the Londoners, we kind of seem to have lost that knowledge earlier. And I don't mean all Londoners, but London kids were clueless. And you'd go out and meet your friends who lived out, further in what we call the sticks, and they go, "Oh no, just rub that on if you've got a little spot or a sore or you've got a cut," and it works. So this is basic knowledge was being hid from us, and it's a shame that we can't rise to that and start teaching our children again, not just about healing, but about even growing crops and so on. So on that note, is there anything you need to add to what we've talked about so far?
Well, you just made me think twice, and just now, about how futuristic knowledge is actually ancient wisdom. And so you could argue, are we progressing, or are we actually going backwards, but in a positive sense, returning to source and remembering, if you like? You mentioned about knowledge and wisdom being passed around the village. One quote springs to mind: "It takes an entire village to raise a child." And number two, a guy that I've got to plug in quickly, he's on YouTube, John Rose. He's probably one of my main mentors when it comes to this kind of stuff. And one thing he says in one of his videos is, we used to have 7 generations of family at one time alive, together. You have 3 or 4, is, like a great grandmother now. It's a pretty special thing. You don't hear of it that often.
Okay.
And so that, now, again, there's a lot of factors to that, we could do a whole show on that. But imagine if you had a great-great-great-grandfather, what knowledge is being passed down, how it's being shared, how it's being improved, because knowledge works both ways. The elders can learn from the youngins as well. It's not just one way.
But even within the community, I talked about this on the show recently, to say that we're not listening to the people around us anymore. We're listening to the external voices for those who claim that they have authority over us, and they don't want to pass that information on because their whole remit is about making profit. So people, especially in the city, and it's not for everybody, but people may know their neighbour to their left and right, but they don't know the people in the next house beyond, or someone that they may be further on, but maybe they bump into them at the bus stop on the way to work and so on, and you give a little nod, no more than that. So we can't share these, the esoteric knowledge that we once had, and we listen to the voice of those who intend to control us, and I don't think they've got a positive message at all. It's all self-serving.
We've been taught it's not polite to discuss religion, money, politics in public or polite company. Well, that's exactly what you've just said. That's the antithesis of what you've just said. In a community, you discuss everything, you talk about everything, you share information. And yeah, it's for me, it's clear that there is, whether there's an overarching agenda or whether there's many agendas, interlacing, or however people want to.
Well, on that note, superb. And hidden agenda. Just stay with me. I'm going to do a break here, then we can come back. I'm talking to Hannah Nemos from Aloe Nottingham. Very interesting. Please do go back and watch the show if you've just popped in. We're going to move on. Let me do a little filler here. And make that 2. I didn't mean to hit that one.
You not heard of the OBG? Big people talk, man. You need to get involved. You might even catch a blessing.
Right, I've got Hannah Nemos on with me, or Nemos. Sorry, I think I asked him and he told me and I forgot. But we talked about him, what he does, the properties of aloe vera and so on. But we want to talk a little bit more about stuff which is current. I think we're heading towards Corona Shimona here, not only, but talking about society in general. So I've got some questions that I want to put forward and just have a general chat. I'm not interviewing Hannah no more, so please do not associate what he's going to say now with his actual business. He's a human being, a free spirit. The business is a separate concern, but we want to talk a little freely now. Is that okay with you, Hannah?
Absolutely, yeah, perfect.
Okay, super. So you mentioned like hidden agenda. Now, this is one of the things that I've always been into all my life. Very, very early started off. I started off as a believer, actually. I was into Eric von Daniken and, like Secrets of the Pyramids from, I forget the name, and, all of these hidden things. But as I got older, I kind of started putting them down. And I mean, not very much older. By the time I was 18, 19, because I was reading this stuff when I was 12, 13 years old, but really a believer. A kid who was into science fiction and fantasy and so on. And within the science fiction realm, which I'm still a massive fan of, I realised a lot of science fiction for me, especially movies and so on, they're like philosophical musings on real life, and there's a lot of conspiracy in them as well, And that kind of became my route. Now, I mentioned already about conspiracy theories and Big Pharma, and you alluded to the idea that we both kind of did that society at large, or those who are controlling it or claim to have authority, are not necessarily doing things in our best interest. So would you like to start off on this? Is there anything you want to talk about, maybe about the current way things are?
I mean, the current situation, I think, raises an awful lot of questions. So sort of as you let it in with Big Pharma and so forth, we mentioned profit a few times. Definitely profit is one of the motives, money and so forth. But if we're to talk about an overarching conspiracy or hidden agenda, hidden governments, anything like that, then I would personally think that these same people print the money. So it's the show is that it's for profit, but ultimately it actually leads to control. It's about control. Now, that's through the profiteering, of course. If you keep people poor or resourceless or whatever, then that has its own effect. But there's so many facets to it.
I understand what you're saying. Go on, go ahead. No, go ahead.
You only have to look at the current situation, and when I say questions are being raised, there are so many contradictions within a single country or worldwide. There are so many accounts now from qualified people. This is the thing. We talked earlier about the trust issues, and if I had a stethoscope and a white coat, we now have a situation where it's more the medium that people are presented on. So if somebody's on television, they obviously have to be right, if you like.
I talked about this. Let me just interject that quickly because I'm going to move on. It's about idolization and television. They don't even have to wear a white coat. All they've got to do is have appeared in a movie that was, seen worldwide. And the next thing, they're talking to Matt Damon about, some really deep issue. And Matt Damon may be, I'm not saying he's just an actor, but from what I've seen of him, it's not he's filled. For sure, he says a few words. He's an actor, after all. He delivers a good speech. But I've never seen him talk about that before or after that one event. So I'm thinking, maybe I think he earned £50,000 for doing this today. But it's not where his heart is. And we believe in them. And we go like, oh, well, if Matt Damon said it, or I'm sorry to target him, you, Mr. Damon. But if an actor or someone in the media says it, then it also must be true. And that's a shame. That really is a shame.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like you say, I think the key word is idolization. On that level, you've got the celebrity fandom and so forth. And then I think it works its way all the way down. So if we were to go to a doctor's surgery, the doctor gets idolized. If we go to the pharmacy, the pharmacist gets idolized. And whichever field we go to, you go to the expert and they get idolized. But another thing I wanted to mention earlier was I do a lot of discussing and a little bit of arguing on Facebook and in general forums, and one thing that you see come up a lot is peer reviewed, is it peer reviewed? And they're either missing the point or they're doing it on purpose, because if you and I are friends and we want to deceive somebody, you and I are going to agree with each other and we're going to do what we want and what we've agreed to deceive the other person.
There's a whole issue around peer reviews anyway. I talked about it lightly on a show, and I plan to do a show in the future. There's a massive problem with peer review, in science, especially once again because the money's there and people are working towards the money.
Now people are questioning who funds the different research and the different experiments and what have you. It seems a bit strange that the findings are never contradictory to what would be in the interest of the funders. I mean, if I were doing that, I would be smart about it, and I'd throw in some fake ones where, do you know what I mean, to make it look real.
Absolutely.
Professional gamblers do this online. If they've got a system that wins, they will intentionally lose some bets so that their account doesn't get shut down to make it look realistic. These people, I don't know if they've become complacent, if it's part of the sort of show of control, but, the story's falling apart from every angle.
Well, there's a philosophical term for that. It's called contingency, and it's just to say that nothing can really be proved all true. Or, if you're trying to prove it false, and it's something that can't be proved all false. So when I have those ideas in my head, when I do see something that's all true, immediately just what's going on, what's the plan here? And once again, I think that relates to the money at least. But going back to the idealization and the trust, it's the same thing again. We put so much trust in these people because typically they may have a title, or they're parents, or once again, to go back to film stars, or even singers, or people who've been on television in the Big Brother house, for instance, and next thing they make a star of them. And we've just been so sold on that. And I don't know how our heads are going to get around this, because I was expecting that they've set something up, and I know this sounds hardcore conspiracy to some people, but I'm the OBG, I say what I like, right? As soon as the coronavirus hit and got kind of popular, Tom Hanks, Idris Elba, I forget who else, but it's always like they've got all these placeholders. So they've got spokespeople for when there's any problems. And I don't know what's happened since. I don't watch the news, but I'm sure they would have appeared again since, or if they have, I would have heard of them. But I've not seen or heard of either of them again. Don't know if they're better, if they're ill, if they've passed away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I find it suspicious that millions of impoverished people in India didn't get it, but Tom Hanks got it, as an example. I've seen so many infomercials or memes flying around which are quoting the figures from Tokyo, for example, and they're quoting the figures from New York, and it doesn't really add up.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make any sense. We're seeing everything. This is a very interesting one, because whether people agree with it or they disagree with it, on both sides there are like 8 angles, and it could be this, and some people are talking about 5G, and some people are talking about masks, and some people are talking about ventilators, and it could be they're trying to, because they're getting $39,000 kickback for putting people on ventilators, they're doing it for the money benefit. Other people are saying, well, no, they're killing people in the old people's homes. So what I'm saying is that this one issue, if you like, is so multifaceted that to get a clear message and a clear conversation is really interesting and really tricky as well.
Yes, I'm a little lost on that myself, because I did a show. I planned to do 3 parts, and I didn't deliver the others because I thought, I just don't know. I can't. All I can keep doing is speculating and talking about my views, and I don't want to do that. I mention conspiracy sometimes and go down that route, but it's for entertainment purposes and to open people's minds at the same time. But I don't know. I don't know what to say about the coronavirus, to be honest. And I do know there's misinformation out there, and that's the way to keep people divided. And at the same time, I'm like, well, there's a hell of a lot of us human beings who are just a hair's breadth away from like panicking and falling over as soon as there's a crisis. And this could also be just a natural way that we behave. The fact that people are fighting each other. And if you put forward an idea that doesn't follow the mainstream, and I've seen you do it, you're a very outspoken person. I love your style. And it's not hard conspiracy. You're questioning things in the main. And then, boom, people want to jump on you and say, oh, how can that be? And it's like, well, I'm not saying it's the truth. It's another option. It's worth thinking about. But these people in the main, their minds are almost saying, well, why would there be anything else worth thinking about? Because we've already heard the official story. And I find that quite scary.
I was about to say that's a very dangerous position. Regardless of what your end opinion is, you to not have processed it yourself is, it's frightening, and that's how any of the atrocities that have happened in the past, when we're talking about society and governments and all of this, that's how they've all happened. They've happened with compliance and obedience and so forth. And I saw a comment earlier from someone. I mean, I know for a fact he won't be watching, and it would amuse him if I was mentioning. He knew I was mentioning him. Some random guy, I don't know him, but he was saying, well, this was on the BBC, and we all know that the BBC cannot publish anything that has not been checked and rechecked and verified and so forth. Now, I don't even know where to start with somebody like that, because you don't have any process. And there's an interesting thing I saw one psychologist online say. He was saying that he was talking to somebody who's being interviewed by a journalist, and he said it's interesting because if I know your position roughly, let's say if we're talking about politics, whether you're left or right, and so forth, he said I can predict pretty much all of your opinions and your views just on the basis of that information. He said, and that's frightening because there's no individualism, there's no thought process. We're 7 billion people, and we're all individual creations, and without getting woo-woo and spiritual about it, we're all collective consciousness and so forth. I mean, that's
yeah. Go as hard as you want on the spiritual stuff.
so how are we? There's a quote that I love. I've thrown it in people's faces, and I try and live by it, and all sorts. And it's, you laugh at me because I'm different, but I laugh at you because you're all the same.
Lovely. I like that. Yep.
And it's mind blowing.
But we do have to stop fighting. We do have to stop fighting. That's the main thing for me. Because
when you mentioned about me being outspoken, I sort of chuckled a little bit, and I thought about my head a little bit in confession, because 100%, if we're going to convince people and we're going to relay information, there's another, I forget the exact quote, but something about if you're going to tell people the truth, make sure you entertain them, or make sure you make them laugh or something, because otherwise they'll kill you. And so there's definitely that element. My approach is probably a little bit of bitterness or weather-wornness, showing that I've been arguing this for so long. I mean, I remember in 2010 talking about these issues and being laughed out of the room by my own friends. Cashless society, mandatory vaccination, surveillance, whatever it might be. And Xbox players manning the drones was a big one, I remember. That's a real beam up on it, because since then it's been published. People who are playing 80 hours or more of Xbox and are good at it are being sought out and used for other purposes, shall we say. So now, there were theories back then. We have hard evidence now. We have facts. We have, you mentioned earlier, and again, we can definitely, and I'm not saying we're going, but we can definitely go in circles about who to trust and who to not. But when we're talking about the coronavirus, for example, I'm no expert, I'm no doctor, I'm no scientist, I'm not a virologist, I'm not an immunologist, but all the people I'm listening to are. and it's funny how some of them have literally gone from being official state witnesses. They are the people that sit in court and speak, in terms of, I'm losing my words here, but they speak as the expert, they provide evidence as an impartial third-party expert. They're good enough to be state witnesses for the DA, but now, suddenly, they're not even fit to have a YouTube channel.
I understand.
And it doesn't make any sense, because months ago they were the highest voice on a certain subject, and now they are being discredited. And there's example after example of this.
Well, people aren't accepting it. That's the toughest part for me. You say this is censorship, and they'll go, oh yeah, but he is a bit of an idiot, talking about the person, or they say something negative, and it's like, it doesn't matter. If you wanted to get up and say that unicorns exist and wear pink, fluffy clothes and so, you should be allowed to do it. No one should tell you that, well, no, unicorns don't exist, so you're not allowed to talk about them on this platform. In their defense, and I think it's hit home to a lot of people, there are, a lot of them are private, like businesses. There is a platform, they can shut people off if they want to. And that should remind people that we shouldn't put all our trust in them. There you go. It's just like showing you slap round the face for the things that you want to hear and talk about, things that are not mainstream, they're being banned. But yeah, they don't ban places like CNN and Washington Times and so on, who fabricated the whole scale of coronavirus in the early days, which was a massive lie, not a mistake, just a lie, you know, and based on stupid, erroneous data. And yet, none of them are being called out for it. And that upsets me too.
I'm a big fan of everything you just said, to be honest with you, and I like how blunt you are with certain parts of it, because I think that's needed. One thing that stuck out in my mind, you mentioned a minute ago, was about trust and authority. The whole system, and when I say system, I'm not just talking about legal or government or political or whatever. The way children are raised, the role the parent assumes, the way we send our kids to school, the role that the teacher assumes, and you know, I can go on and on. It's all set, it's all pre-directed, and it all leads to a similar kind of behavior. And that's why, another thing I wanted to mention, and I'm going to sound like a bit of a douchebag without meaning to.
Go for it.
We're talking about people understanding conspiracies and that theories are not theories if they are facts, and looking at alternative evidence and other doctors. The amount, cognitive dissonance is something you've touched on a few times in the show, and obviously that's at play. But the basic level logic fails I have seen day in and day out from everyday people, be they my neighbours, my customers, people on the bus, in the taxi, it doesn't matter. The logic fails are so blunderous that I'm genuinely questioning people's average IQs. Because I could give 100 examples.
The average IQ isn't that high, actually, and it's not. I don't know. I mean, I'm not putting anyone down for it. It's a stupid test anyway. I think it's the worst test that ever existed. But what I mean is that those things aren't important. Whether people are fickle or not isn't the issue. If we're fickle and we trust and we want simple lives, that shouldn't be a problem. That's the way it is. It's for that reason. We're all fighting each other to be smart and clever and so on. But really, it's not that important. You know, you get someone who's what we call a high IQ, but they happen to, okay, look, this person builds the boats and the bridges in our community. And the others, they work on the farms and so on. They don't really want to extend beyond that. They raise a family and they raise sons and daughters to farm after them, and it keeps our community growing. Their IQ, it should never, ever be an issue. The issue is simply that we're being led by bad people, and it affects those people. They're manipulating and taking advantage of those people, and us as well. I don't think I'm any smarter than those people, even though my IQ was 141. But it's the worst test in the world. It's just so biased. I love physics, I love maths, and I love engineering and so on. And if you like those things, your IQ test is really high. It doesn't really cater for people who like literature or art. And
Really,
go ahead.
Really, I'm glad that you've corrected me in the way you have, because I'm using IQ completely incorrectly and probably egotistically.
No, I don't think you came across as negative.
But it's common sense is what I'm questioning, and that doesn't.
Yes.
That's much lower level than IQ, which is the original point I was trying to make. That people, we're talking about deep state and hidden governments and so agendas and so forth. If you can't figure out that unless you're changing your plastic gloves, every single time you touch something,
sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. Go on, yeah.
Then that's a common sense issue. I completely agree. It doesn't even get anywhere near IQ. And I mean, I'm a big believer in the whole Einstein. If it's an Einstein quote, well, the quote's beautiful either way. What is it about? Everyone is born a genius, but if we test the fish's ability to climb,
okay, true.
it's all like thinking it's stupid. And so I couldn't be, I'm 100% in that camp. I mean, I'm a plant grower at the end of the day. But the common sense issues here, I'm talking about general public now, but we could question the common sense issue within government published information. I saw one from earlier today. I'll be honest, I don't know if it was America or this country, where they were talking about you can now car share, but you must keep the windows open and you must not look at each other.
Stop.
An official government pamphlet.
Yeah. Let me tell you something what I do, actually. I don't look at all of the news. It depends. If I want news, I get it from a million sources. I've got accounts in so many different countries and different social media platforms and so on. And, it works for me because I get a feel for what those people are thinking. And then sometimes I think, right, this is a general kind of feeling because it's everywhere. So with this now and the virus, what I do is I just sit back and carry on doing what I do. And some people may argue that it's ignorance, but then I'll talk to you and I'll talk to her and I'll talk to him and I'll talk to them and I'll listen. And I think, right, this is what's going on. It's not that one news source over here or this news source, because at the end of the day, whether it's a Washington Post and their lies, or, like I see some people going, oh, check this out, and it's like Joe's blog or something, and I'm like, well, it holds no more or no less weight than the Washington Post, so you don't take either as gospel. But if you keep on looking out for all of those sources, and people aren't making the time, and believe me, I make time. From the minute my eyes open and so on at night, I'm feeling for the sources all day long, even while I'm being active and doing other stuff. And then I jump back and I can say, people are not working hard enough at finding a solution. And that's all I need to know. I don't need to put forward what the answer is. I don't need to put forward what needs to be done. But if at some point, through doing what I am doing, what I just explained, I do feel it, then I'll talk about it to people and say, yeah, have you considered maybe, for instance, I want to write a letter for them, asking them to decommission the new laws that they put in place. But I've seen a really good source doing it, and they got 100,000 signatures and so on. And I'm thinking, maybe I don't need to. And it's not a case of loads of people doing it. There's one body that's doing it really well. They're sending that to Parliament anyway. They should get listened to over my one, and means I can take a step back and not necessarily do it, which is what I'm working on at the moment anyway. So to get back to the point, it's about getting a feel what's going on, trying to understand what's going on from all the sources, and more importantly to everybody, not to take sides, because whether you think it's this or that, if you take sides, and we all want a side in life, it seems, I don't, I want to take sides, then we just end up fighting each other. And there's no point calling them COVIDiots, I think is a term, and calling the others like conspiracy theorists, because we've started a battle now, and now you're looking to see if they fit this structure that you've made. And if they do, or if they're even close in any way, you just push them in there, and you don't want no outliers. They have to be special. Otherwise, you put them into these boxes, and then we just end up fighting each other. So stay calm, everyone. Let's wait. As I said in the very early stages of this, when it's over, it's really, really bad, just fight. Just say no. We're just not having it. And the other school of thought is, no, don't even let it happen. Let's take action now. But we don't know what action to take because we don't truly know what's going on. And we can't fight against each small change that's there. No, we're going out. But is it really safe to go out? Do you know what I mean? And we don't know. So let me say this. Can I ask you on this one? We're going to have to close off. We've been on for an hour or close to an hour. So make this the last one. Go for as long as you need to.
I was going to say, you've just inspired a really good, it's literally come in my head as you were speaking. If they don't claim to be open-minded and they just openly accept that they aren't open-minded and they admit it, I've got nothing for them. Nobody's got anything for them because they're not open-minded. Anybody who claims to be open-minded, regardless of which side of things they're on or how they think, if you're truly open-minded, look at the mainstream media and the commercial outlets and the information that's sort of pouring out anyway. It's not difficult to see it. And then take a moment to look at the things that have been censored, taken down, hidden. It won't take much effort because there are plenty of people still sharing it, and there are still, if something's taken down from YouTube, it will be on BitChute, it's on a different platform. So the internet's vast. There's a reason they haven't managed to already control it. Funny thing is, they're not talking about tracking and tracing people based on an illness, but there's a lot of questions about the absolute heinous crimes that happen. They haven't been tracked and traced. But I digress. Look at the mainstream, and then look at the hidden stuff. Because if you're truly open-minded, you have to question, why would they hide it? If it's that ridiculous and that stupid, let everyone see it.
Absolutely, that makes so much sense.
Let someone speak, and if they're a fool, they're gonna show they're a fool, rather than shutting them down or whatever. And I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else who is. But look at the information that's been taken down, and question why it's been taken down. And don't just dismiss it that, oh, well, I just trust the government and they must have found the dangerous information and therefore it's taken down, end of conversation. It doesn't make a difference to me whether you do that. It's not going to benefit you and your family. And sooner or later, everyone's going to know the truth. I've been a big believer of that for years and years, and that's one of the things that keeps me going when I'm having doubts or when you mentioned earlier, there's haters jumping on the comments. We're all going to find out the truth sooner or later. I really believe that. So sooner rather than later, and rather you than your children. So
superb, great advice. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye because we've had a fantastic show today. Thank you so much for coming in, Hannah. We talked a little about who you are and a little about your business. Hannah Nemos, is from Aloe, Nottingham. I want to express once again, as he clearly stated earlier, for some people who are not going to go back and watch the rest of the show, his views and his business are two separate entities. Please do not get them confused. He's an amazing man, running an amazing business with a fantastic product. And his views, which are in line with mine, are a completely separate issue. So on that note, can I ask you to give us a little end note and say goodbye, and ask you to hang up after that, please?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, thank you very much for having me. I mean, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. And like you said, we're clearly like-minded. I hope we can do this again at some stage, maybe talk about different things. And yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. And on that note, can I ask you to hang up?
Bye-bye.
Bye. Right, that was Hannah Nemos. I'm happy with that. We got into the Corona Shimona, even though we started off talking about his business, but it's something that has to be said, I'm afraid, something that we had to talk about. But don't forget, if you want to go back and learn a little bit about aloe vera and about his business, Aloe Nottingham, do go ahead and do that. I think aloe vera is a fantastic product. I learned a lot about it when I was whenever I've been abroad, to be honest. My mother always had plants at home as well, but I didn't study them enough because I was quite a bit younger. But traveling to other countries, I see people using it all day long, and I've become a fan of it myself. I did lose interest, I must admit. I used it last maybe 4 years ago when I was in Nicaragua, and it played a big part in my life there. Years before that in Thailand, we used to wash our hair with it in the sea and so on. But it's worth investigating, especially as Hannah talked about the properties for the digestive system and so on. And on that note, thanks for coming in tonight. We did good. And I'll be doing the show tomorrow, the Sunday show, or hopefully anyway. I've got so much calling me away. Thanks for staying with me tonight. You've been amazing. I've been the OBG. I don't think people really know the true hypnotic power of television. You know how it pulls us in and just keeps telling us to consume, buy, and tells us to hate each other and separates us and causes the greatest divides, all under the name of entertainment. And every time I turn on my TV, it's just like no surprise. It's all of those programs and they're pushing out lies. And in between there's the adverts and they do it again. And they're trying to convince us that we're friends and have us trained